The sound of rushing footsteps echoed through the sterile white corridors of Mount Valley Hospital in California. Nurses shouted orders, pushing the gurney as crimson blood spread across the sheets beneath Olivia Carter. She was only 29, 8 months pregnant, and now fighting for both her life and her unborn child's. The sight was horrifying, blood pouring faster than the doctors could control, monitors beeping wildly as alarms screamed. 20 doctors surrounded her, voices overlapping in panic. "BP dropping," one yelled. "We're losing her," another cried. Yet no matter what they tried, transfusions, compressions, emergency procedures, the bleeding refused to stop. It was as though her body had simply given up, as if something deeper than medicine was tearing her apart. Her father, Robert Miller, stood frozen just beyond the glass doors, his fists pressed against the frame. 60 years old, strong and steady his whole life, but at that moment he was shaking. This was his only daughter, the girl he raised alone after his wife passed, the one he had promised to protect no matter what. Tears blurred his vision as he whispered, "Please, God, don't take her from me." On the other side of the hallway, Ethan Carter, Olivia's husband, adjusted his tie, avoiding eye contact. To the world, Ethan was the picture of a perfect man, a successful real estate developer, handsome, respected, admired. But beneath that polished exterior was a truth so poisonous it could destroy Olivia's will to live. He had been living a double life, hiding a lover, betraying his pregnant wife when she needed him most. And Olivia knew. Hours before the emergency, she had found the messages on his phone. Words of intimacy meant for another woman, not for her. The betrayal sliced deeper than any blade could. Her chest tightened, her pulse raced, and before she could even process the shock, her body collapsed. Within minutes, she was in an ambulance, and within an hour, 20 doctors were declaring her case impossible. "Massive hemorrhage, unresponsive to treatment," Dr. Richard Collins barked, the lead physician. His tone was cold, clinical, detached. "Prepare the family for the worst." But Robert refused to accept it. His daughter wasn't gone yet. He slammed his fist against the wall, startling the nurses. "She's stronger than you think. Don't you dare give up on her." His voice cracked with desperation, but Collins only shook his head, too proud to admit what none of them wanted to see, that this wasn't just a medical crisis. Something invisible, something emotional, was fueling the disaster. Inside the operating room, Olivia drifted between consciousness and darkness. She saw flashes, her classroom full of children, the nursery she had decorated, the smile of the baby she hadn't yet met. And then she saw Ethan, his face blurred, standing beside another woman. Pain shot through her chest, sharper than the bleeding itself. Her heart whispered one thought: "I can't take this anymore." The doctors shouted louder. Blood poured faster. Robert prayed harder. The line between life and death grew thinner with every second. And just when it seemed Olivia would slip away forever, a single detail, overlooked by all 20 doctors, was about to change everything. Before the flashing ambulance lights, before the screaming doctors and blood-soaked sheets, Olivia Carter's life looked picture-perfect to anyone on the outside. She lived in a stunning Los Angeles home with marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a view that stretched out to the Pacific Ocean. Her husband, Ethan Carter, was the kind of man neighbors envied. Wealthy, charming, and always dressed in designer suits. Together, they appeared to be the golden couple. But behind the expensive curtains and flawless social media posts was a different truth. Olivia had never been about the money. She was a school teacher, happiest when surrounded by children's laughter and crayon-stained fingers. While Ethan thrived in boardrooms and real estate deals, Olivia found joy in reading bedtime stories and painting tiny animals for the nursery. She had always dreamed of becoming a mother, and when she discovered she was pregnant, her heart overflowed with joy. The pregnancy felt like the missing piece of their marriage. For months, Olivia imagined how their lives would change. She spoke softly to her unborn child every night, pressing her hand against her swelling belly. "You're my miracle," she would whisper. "You're the reason I'll never feel alone again." Friends and family celebrated with them. Baby showers filled the house with pink balloons, cupcakes, and laughter. Olivia's father, Robert, was overjoyed at the thought of finally becoming a grandfather. He bought tiny shoes, saved every ultrasound photo Olivia gave him, and promised her that he would always be there for her and the baby. On the surface, Ethan played the role of a proud husband. He posed for pictures, his hand protectively over Olivia's belly, flashing his perfect smile for the cameras. To anyone watching, he looked like a man deeply in love, ready to welcome fatherhood. But behind closed doors, his attention began to drift. He grew colder, often leaving Olivia alone at night under the excuse of late meetings. His phone, once left carelessly on the counter, now never left his pocket. Olivia noticed the change but brushed it off. Pregnancy, she told herself, was emotional. Maybe she was overthinking. She forced herself to believe her husband's words when he kissed her forehead and said, "Don't worry, Liv, I'm just stressed with work." Still, small cracks grew larger. The glow on Olivia's face dimmed. She often stared out the nursery window, wondering if something was slipping away. She tried to distract herself with baby preparations, folding tiny clothes, arranging stuffed animals, and painting clouds on the walls. But deep down, a quiet fear crept in. She wanted so badly to believe in Ethan, to believe in the family they were building, yet his distance was undeniable. One night, unable to sleep, she sat alone in the nursery rocking chair. She placed her hand on her belly and whispered to her unborn child, "Even if the whole world turns against me, I'll always love you. You'll never be alone." A single tear slipped down her cheek, falling onto the baby blanket she had knitted herself. And while Olivia clung to hope, she had no idea that the truth about Ethan's betrayal was already closer than she imagined. For Olivia Carter, pregnancy was supposed to be the happiest chapter of her life. From the moment she saw the positive test, she was overwhelmed with tears of joy. She ran straight to her father's house that morning, waving the tiny stick in her hand. Robert's eyes filled with tears as he hugged her tightly. "You're going to be a mother," he whispered, his voice breaking with pride. "I'm going to be a grandfather." Olivia embraced every part of her journey. She kept a journal of her pregnancy milestones, writing about the first flutter she felt, the late-night cravings for strawberry ice cream, and the long talks she had with her unborn child while rocking in the nursery chair. Every ultrasound picture was carefully taped into the journal, each one captioned with a promise of love. Her joy was contagious. At school, her young students gathered around her growing belly, placing their tiny hands gently and giggling when they thought they felt a kick. Olivia glowed as she laughed with them, imagining her baby one day sitting in the very same classroom. For her, motherhood wasn't just a dream, it was the very meaning of life. But alongside the joy came small, troubling signs that she tried to ignore. Sometimes she felt an unusual heaviness in her chest, moments when her heart seemed to race too fast. Other nights, she would wake up drenched in sweat, her mind clouded with a strange sadness she couldn't explain. Robert noticed her fatigue during family dinners. "You look tired, Liv," he said more than once. But Olivia brushed it off with a smile. "It's just pregnancy, Dad. I'll be fine." Ethan, meanwhile, seemed distracted. At first, Olivia convinced herself it was the pressure of work. He still attended doctor's appointments, though he often answered emails while the doctor spoke. He still accompanied her to baby stores, though his eyes sometimes drifted to his phone more than the crib she was admiring. Olivia wanted so desperately to believe in the man she had married, the man she thought would stand beside her through every storm. The signs grew harder to ignore. Olivia found herself crying unexpectedly, her emotions swinging wildly between joy and despair. She tried to talk to Ethan one evening, confessing that she felt overwhelmed and scared. He barely looked up from his laptop, muttering, "You're strong, Liv. You'll be fine." The words, though meant to reassure, cut deeper than silence. Still, Olivia clung to hope. She focused on the baby, the life growing inside her. She decorated the nursery in soft pastel colors, painting little stars on the ceiling so her child would always feel like they were sleeping under the sky. At night, she placed her hands over her belly and whispered, "We'll be okay, my love. Mommy promises you that." But promises could only hold so much weight. Olivia's heart, though full of love for her child, was carrying another burden she hadn't yet faced. The fear that her husband's heart was no longer hers. And soon that fear would transform into a devastating discovery that would shatter her world completely. It was late on a Friday night when Olivia Carter first felt the uneasy pull in her chest. Not physical pain, but the ache of suspicion. Ethan had promised to be home for dinner. She had made his favorite meal, roasted chicken with garlic potatoes, carefully seasoning it the way he liked. The hours slipped by and the food grew cold. At nearly midnight, Ethan finally walked in, smelling faintly of cologne that Olivia didn't recognize. He smiled casually, loosening his tie. "Sorry, Liv. Another late meeting. You know how it is." He kissed her cheek quickly, but his eyes darted away, avoiding hers. Olivia forced a smile, but her stomach twisted. Something about his tone, something about the way he avoided looking at her, it didn't feel right. The following week, the unease grew heavier. Ethan's phone, once left on the kitchen counter, now never left his pocket. He took calls in hushed tones, stepping into another room. He began working weekends, leaving Olivia alone in their home, staring at the nursery walls she had painted for their child. One evening, while folding tiny baby clothes, Olivia heard his phone buzz on the nightstand. For a moment, she hesitated. She had never been the type to invade someone's privacy. But the ache in her chest was unbearable, and her trembling hands reached for the phone. The screen lit up with a message that froze her heart. "Can't stop thinking about last night. You're all I want. Sophia." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Her vision blurred. She scrolled further, each message a knife to her heart. Ethan had been meeting with Sophia, his young assistant. Romantic dinners, secret hotel rooms, promises of a future together. The man she thought was her partner, the father of her unborn child, had been living a lie. Tears streamed down her face as she sank onto the bed, clutching her swollen belly. The baby kicked gently, as if sensing her pain. "I'm so sorry," Olivia whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry you have to feel this." When Ethan returned that night, she confronted him. "Who is she?" she asked, holding up the phone with trembling hands. Ethan froze, then forced a laugh. "Liv, it's not what you think." Her voice rose, breaking with anguish. "Don't lie to me, Ethan. I read everything. Every word. How could you do this to me, to our child?" For a moment, Ethan's mask slipped. His expression hardened, cold and unapologetic. "You've been so emotional, Liv. You're making this pregnancy harder than it needs to be. Maybe if you focused less on drama and more on yourself, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." The words struck her like bullets. Olivia's knees buckled, and she collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. The betrayal was unbearable, the pain suffocating. Her heart raced violently, her breathing shallow. That night, Olivia's world shattered. The marriage she had fought to believe in was nothing but ashes, and the man she loved had turned into a stranger before her eyes. And as the weight of betrayal crushed her, the stress on her fragile body would soon push her to the brink of disaster. The days after Olivia discovered Ethan's affair were unbearable. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Sophia's name flashing across his phone screen, the heart emoji mocking her pain. Sleep became impossible. She lay awake in the nursery rocking chair, clutching her belly, whispering through tears, "It's just you and me now, baby. We have to be strong." Her appetite vanished. Meals went untouched, her once glowing face pale and hollow. Robert noticed the change immediately. At Sunday dinner, he watched Olivia pick at her food in silence. "Liv, are you sure you're okay?" he asked gently. She forced a smile, her voice trembling. "I'm fine, Dad, just tired." But Robert's eyes narrowed with worry. He had raised her alone, and he knew when she was hiding pain. Ethan, meanwhile, grew more distant. He stayed out later, his excuses thinner. When he was home, he scrolled through his phone with a cold detachment, ignoring Olivia's quiet sobs in the next room. Every cruel silence cut deeper than words ever could. The stress on Olivia's body began to show. Her heart raced uncontrollably at night, her hands trembled, and waves of dizziness made her collapse onto the bed. One evening, she felt an intense cramp, sharper than anything she had experienced before. Panic shot through her chest. She clutched her belly, gasping for air. She tried to call Ethan, but he didn't answer. Desperate, she dialed her father. Within minutes, Robert rushed over, finding her on the floor, tears streaming down her face. "Dad?" she whispered weakly. "Something's wrong? The baby? I can't breathe." Robert's heart pounded as he scooped her up. "Hold on, Liv. I've got you." He rushed her into his car and sped toward Mount Valley Hospital, running red lights, honking furiously, praying out loud. "Please God, don't let me lose her. Not like this." At the hospital, chaos erupted. Doctors shouted orders as nurses wheeled Olivia into the emergency ward. Blood soaked through her dress, pooling on the stretcher. "She's hemorrhaging," a nurse cried. "Massive blood loss." 20 doctors swarmed the room. Machines beeped wildly. Bags of blood were rushed in, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. Robert stood outside, his fists pressed against the glass, tears streaming down his face. He had never felt so powerless. Inside, Olivia drifted in and out of consciousness. She saw flashes of her baby's face in her mind, though she had never met them. She saw her father's kind smile, his hands holding hers when she was little. And then, like poison, she saw Ethan's cold eyes, his cruel words. "Maybe if you weren't so dramatic, I wouldn't have looked elsewhere." Her heart clenched violently. The betrayal, the sorrow, the loneliness, it all crashed down at once. The monitors screamed as her blood pressure plummeted. Doctors yelled louder, desperate to save her, but nothing worked. Robert pounded on the glass. "She's my daughter. Don't you dare give up." His voice cracked with desperation. But Dr. Collins, leading the team, shook his head grimly. "She's fading fast. Prepare the family." And as Olivia's body fought to survive, everyone believed they were witnessing her final moments, except her father, who refused to accept that this was the end. The waiting room at Mount Valley Hospital was thick with silence. The hum of vending machines and the occasional squeak of nurses' shoes filled the void where laughter and conversation should have been. Olivia's relatives sat scattered across the plastic chairs, their faces pale, their hands clenched in restless prayers. They had been told to prepare for the worst. Robert Miller, Olivia's father, sat hunched forward, his elbows on his knees, his calloused hands pressed against his face. For 60 years, he had lived as a man of quiet strength. He had buried his wife, raised his daughter alone, and worked tirelessly to give Olivia the life she deserved. But nothing had prepared him for the moment he might lose her and his unborn grandchild in the same night. Every time the doors swung open, his head snapped up, desperate for answers. Nurses passed by with unreadable expressions. No one offered hope. No one dared to. Ethan Carter sat across the room, scrolling through his phone. His suit jacket was draped carelessly over the chair beside him, his tie loosened as if this were nothing more than an inconvenience. Robert's jaw clenched as he watched his son-in-law. Not once had Ethan asked for updates. Not once had he paced the floor or broken into tears. He was calm, almost too calm, and that silence screamed louder than any sob. "Don't you care that your wife is in there fighting for her life?" Robert finally snapped, his voice cutting through the tension. Heads turned, but Ethan didn't look up. "I'm worried, Robert," Ethan replied smoothly, still staring at his screen. "But panicking won't help anyone. Let the doctors do their job." Robert's fists trembled at his sides. Something about Ethan's cold detachment gnawed at him, like a shadow lurking behind a closed door. He thought of Olivia's pale face in the ER, her body trembling as blood soaked the sheets. He thought of how her heart monitor had spiked the moment Ethan entered the room. There was a connection there, something the doctors weren't seeing, something beyond medicine. Hours passed. Collins emerged briefly, his expression grim. "We've done everything possible. She's not responding. If there's no improvement soon, prepare yourselves." His words shattered the family like glass. Olivia's aunt sobbed into her hands. Her cousins clung to one another. Robert's knees weakened, but he refused to crumble. No, there had to be something more. As he sat back down, his eyes drifted toward Ethan again. The man was texting quickly, his thumbs moving with urgency, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. Robert's chest tightened. Rage burned inside him. But deeper than that was suspicion. Who was Ethan talking to at a time like this? Why did Olivia's suffering seem to mean so little to him? Robert's instincts, sharpened by years of protecting his daughter, screamed that the truth was buried in Ethan's silence. It wasn't just chance that Olivia had collapsed so suddenly. Something had pushed her over the edge, something beyond her body, and Robert vowed that if the doctors couldn't find the reason, he would uncover it himself, no matter what it cost. The night dragged on in the hospital, every tick of the clock sounding like a drumbeat of dread. Olivia remained in critical condition, her body weak, her baby's life hanging in the balance. The doctors were exhausted, repeating procedures that had already failed. "It doesn't make sense," one muttered under his breath. "She should be responding." But she wasn't. The bleeding slowed and surged unpredictably, as though something invisible controlled it. Robert Miller couldn't stop replaying the events in his mind. He remembered the way Olivia's heart monitor spiked when Ethan entered the emergency room earlier. He remembered the vacant look in her eyes, a look he hadn't seen since the day her mother's coffin was lowered into the ground years ago. This wasn't just physical. Something inside her had broken, something the doctors were too blind to see. As Robert sat in the hallway, Emily Parker, the young nurse who had been by Olivia's side since admission, quietly approached him. She carried a clipboard against her chest, her face pale with concern. "Mr. Miller," she whispered, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "There's something strange about her case." Robert leaned forward, desperate. "Tell me." Emily hesitated. Her vitals change drastically depending on who's in the room. When you speak to her, her heart rate steadies a little, but when Ethan enters... She lowered her voice. Her pulse races, her body tenses. It's like she's fighting against him, even unconscious. Robert's blood ran cold. He had suspected Ethan's indifference wasn't natural, but this was more than neglect. Olivia's body was literally rejecting his presence. He clenched his fists. "You've seen this with your own eyes?" Emily nodded. "Yes, but Dr. Collins won't listen. He says I'm imagining things. He only trusts what he can measure in tests, and those tests keep coming back inconclusive. But I know what I saw." Robert's mind swirled. The puzzle pieces began fitting together. The fatigue Olivia had hidden, the sadness in her eyes at dinner, the way she avoided answering when he asked about her marriage. And Ethan, always on his phone, always detached. Something had happened between them, something devastating enough to crush Olivia's spirit into silence. When Robert glanced across the waiting room, Ethan was once again texting furiously, his lips curving into the faintest smirk. The sight made Robert's stomach churn. He rose from his seat, his eyes locked on the man he had once reluctantly accepted as his son-in-law. "Who are you texting, Ethan?" Robert asked, his voice sharp. Ethan looked up lazily, pocketing the phone. "Work," he said with practiced ease. "Deals don't wait just because life gets complicated." Robert's jaw tightened, his instincts screamed louder now. Olivia's collapse wasn't random, it was connected to Ethan. The proof was there, hidden in her reactions, in her suffering, in her silence. Emily touched Robert's arm, her voice trembling. "Mr. Miller, if we don't figure this out soon, she won't make it. You're the only one who can get through to her. Please, find out what happened to her before it's too late." And in that moment, Robert knew. The answers lay not in the hospital charts, but in the secrets his daughter had been too broken to share. Robert had held back long enough. The weight of his daughter's life, resting on the edge of death, had burned away every ounce of patience he once had for Ethan Carter. The young man had sat through the night, tapping at his phone, offering no tears, no prayers, not even the pretense of concern. For Robert, the silence spoke volumes. He stood, his chair scraping against the tile floor of the waiting room. His voice cut like steel. "Ethan, we need to talk." Ethan looked up lazily, his brows raised as though Robert's demand was an inconvenience. "Now? Really?" "I told you, Robert, worrying isn't going to save her." Robert's hands curled into fists at his sides. "Don't play games with me. My daughter is in there bleeding to death, and every time you step near her, her body reacts like it's under attack. Do you think I don't notice? Do you think the staff hasn't noticed?" The mask slipped from Ethan's face for just a second, a flash of irritation, a tightening of his jaw, but then he forced a smirk. "You're grasping at straws. She's sick, that's all. Stop blaming me." Robert took a step closer, his voice rising. "She wasn't sick until you broke her spirit. I don't know what you've done, but I'll find out, and when I do, you'll answer for it." Other relatives in the waiting room shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between the two men. Tension crackled like electricity, heavy enough to suffocate the room. Ethan leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You've always hated me, Robert. Admit it. You never thought I was good enough for her. But she chose me, not you. So maybe you should stop pretending you know what's best for her." Robert's eyes blazed. "Good enough? A good man doesn't abandon his pregnant wife at night. A good man doesn't sit there scrolling on his phone while she fights for her life. And a good man doesn't smile while his wife's father begs God to keep her alive." His voice broke with anguish. "You disgust me. The smirk faded from Ethan's lips. For a brief moment, there was only silence. Then he stood abruptly, stepping so close Robert could feel his breath. "Be careful, old man," he whispered. "You don't know what you're accusing me of." Robert didn't flinch, his jaw tightened, his chest heaving with fury. "No, Ethan, I know exactly what I'm accusing you of. You betrayed her. I don't have the proof yet, but I can see it in her eyes, in the way she trembles when you walk in the room. You broke her heart, and it's killing her." Ethan's eyes darkened, his mask slipping again. For the first time that night, fear flickered behind his arrogance. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, the double doors to the ER burst open. A nurse rushed out, breathless. Her blood pressure just crashed again. "We need the family now." And as Robert turned toward the doors, he knew this was his moment. The truth about Ethan's betrayal had to be uncovered before Olivia's time ran out. The hospital lights were harsh, unyielding, and Robert Miller felt like they were burning holes straight into his skull. Hours had passed with no real progress. The doctors kept repeating the same empty phrases. "We're doing everything we can. She's critical but stable." Words that meant nothing when his daughter's life was still bleeding away. Exhaustion clawed at him, but he couldn't sit still. Every nerve in his body screamed that something wasn't right, something deeper than the medical charts the doctors obsessed over. He needed answers, and he knew he wouldn't find them in that sterile waiting room, so he drove. Leaving the hospital felt like betrayal, but Robert told himself it was for Olivia. He drove straight to the Carter house, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his heart pounding. The mansion, with its perfect landscaping and spotless facade, mocked him with its silence. From the outside, it looked like paradise. But inside, Robert suspected, were the pieces of a truth that could explain why his daughter's spirit was slipping away. He moved through the house like a man on a mission. His footsteps echoed in the vast hallways, past expensive art and polished marble floors. He wasn't looking for wealth. He was looking for Olivia. Something of hers. Something that might tell him what she had been too afraid to say. In her bedroom, he found it. A small leather-bound notebook sat on the nightstand beside her bed. The cover was soft, worn from use, with Olivia's delicate handwriting embossed in gold. "My pregnancy journal." Robert's hands shook as he opened it. At first, the pages warmed his heart. Drawings of tiny baby shoes, ultrasound pictures carefully taped in, entries filled with hope. "First kick today," one note read. "Felt like butterfly wings. I cried happy tears." Another page described how she couldn't wait for Ethan to hold their child for the first time. But as he turned the pages, the tone changed. The handwriting grew messier, the ink smudged by what looked like tears. "Ethan is distant. He says he's busy, but I can feel him slipping away. I saw messages on his phone tonight. Sophia, my heart feels like it's breaking. Does he not love me anymore? Am I not enough?" Robert's throat tightened as he read. Each word was a dagger, each sentence a confirmation of what he had feared. His daughter wasn't just fighting for her life because of a medical complication. She was dying from heartbreak. The final entry nearly broke him. "I can't stop crying. The baby kicks when I cry, and I feel so guilty. I want to be strong, but I feel so alone. If anything happens to me, please tell my baby I love them more than life itself." Robert clutched the journal to his chest, his tears falling freely now. His suspicions had been right. Ethan's betrayal had crushed Olivia's spirit, and her body was collapsing under the weight of it. He wiped his face, fury burning through his grief. This was the proof. This was what the doctors refused to see. His daughter wasn't just a patient. She was a broken heart fighting to survive. And as Robert closed the journal, he knew he finally had the weapon he needed to expose Ethan and save Olivia before it was too late. Robert Miller drove back to Mount Valley Hospital with Olivia's journal pressed against his chest, as though it were her beating heart. Every word he had read echoed in his mind, the tears smudging the ink, the desperation of a daughter betrayed by the man she trusted most. Rage simmered beneath his grief. If the doctors had ignored the signs before, they could no longer deny them now. He had proof. The automatic doors hissed open, and Robert marched down the corridor, his boots pounding the linoleum floor. His weathered face was streaked with tears, but his eyes burned with fierce determination. Nurses glanced at him nervously. sensing the storm building within the man who had once been quiet, steady, polite. Dr. Richard Collins stood at the nurse's station, reviewing a stack of charts. His expression was stern, clinical, as if he were already preparing to deliver the final blow to Olivia's family. Robert slammed the journal onto the counter, startling everyone. "You keep saying you don't know what's killing her," Robert snapped, his voice shaking with anger. "Well, I do. It's not just her body failing, it's her heart, her spirit, and this journal proves it." Collins arched an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Mr. Miller, with all due respect, medical science doesn't rely on diaries. We rely on data, tests, blood work, facts." Robert jabbed his finger at the journal. "These are facts. The fact that my daughter discovered her husband cheating on her. The fact that she wrote about sleepless nights, panic, and despair. She's been bleeding inside long before she started bleeding here in your hospital. You keep treating her body while ignoring the truth. That heartbreak pushed her over the edge." The waiting room had gone silent. Even Ethan looked up from his phone, his smirk faltering. Collins sighed, shaking his head. "Emotional distress does not cause this level of hemorrhage, Mr. Miller. I understand your grief, but you're grasping at shadows." Robert's fists trembled. "Shadows? You think this is shadows?" He opened the journal, reading aloud Olivia's final entry. "If anything happens to me, please tell my baby I loved them more than life itself." His voice cracked as he continued. She wasn't preparing for death because of her pregnancy. She was preparing for death because she had no will left to live. Emily Parker, the young nurse, stepped forward. Her voice was soft but steady. "He's right. I've seen it myself. Her vitals change depending on who's in the room. When her father speaks, she stabilizes. When Ethan enters, she deteriorates. I've logged it privately because I knew no one would believe me." Murmurs spread among the staff. For the first time, doubt flickered in Collins's eyes. But Ethan's face darkened. His jaw clenched as he glared at Robert. Robert turned toward him, his voice rising with righteous fury. "This is your doing, Ethan. You broke her heart. And I swear before God, if she doesn't survive this, I'll make sure the world knows the truth about you." And as Robert's words hung heavy in the air, a sudden alarm blared from the operating room. Olivia's condition had taken a sharp turn for the worse. The shrill alarm echoed through the hospital corridor, piercing the already tense atmosphere. Robert's heart dropped into his stomach as red lights flashed above the operating room doors. Nurses sprinted past with carts of supplies, their faces grim. "She's crashing again," one shouted, vanishing into the room where Olivia fought for her life. Robert stumbled forward, pressing his palms against the glass window of the observation panel. Inside, chaos reigned. Monitors blared warnings, doctors barked orders, and blood transfusion bags dangled desperately from their stands. Olivia's body lay still, her skin pale as porcelain, her chest rising in shallow, fragile breaths. "Blood pressure falling," a resident yelled. "Heart rate unstable," another added. "Prepare for emergency intervention." Robert's throat closed. He banged on the glass, shouting through tears. "Fight, Olivia! Please, baby girl, fight!" His voice cracked, and his knees buckled, but he refused to collapse. His daughter needed his strength now more than ever. Behind him, Ethan stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. His calm demeanor in the face of his wife's collapse sent a chill down Robert's spine. Even now, as Olivia hovered between life and death, Ethan looked more annoyed than devastated. Emily Parker rushed up beside Robert, her face flushed from running. She glanced into the room, then back at him. "It's worse than before. If her spirit doesn't lift soon, she won't make it through this episode." Robert clenched his fists, his mind racing. "Then we have to lift it, somehow." Inside, Dr. Collins performed chest compressions as another doctor prepared adrenaline. "She's slipping away," he barked. Sweat dripped down his forehead, but his pride kept him from admitting defeat. He looked like a man trying to outrun death while refusing to admit he was losing. Robert pressed his forehead against the glass, tears streaming freely now. "Olivia, listen to me," he whispered fiercely, as though his daughter could hear him through walls, through monitors, through pain. "You're not alone. I'm right here. I raised you by myself after your mother died, and I promised I'd never let you down. Don't leave me now. Don't leave your baby. Fight." Emily placed a hand on his arm. "She might hear you. Don't stop." Robert continued, his voice breaking. You've survived too much to let this take you. Remember the nights you cried after your first heartbreak? I told you love would hurt but never destroy you. And this man who betrayed you, he doesn't get to take your life. You're stronger than him, stronger than his lies." Inside, Olivia's eyelids flickered. Her body twitched faintly, the faintest sign of resistance. "Look," Emily gasped. She responded. The monitors stabilized slightly, but only for a moment. Then another alarm shrieked. Her blood pressure plunged again, her pulse weakening to a faint throb. Doctors scrambled, shouting louder, pumping more fluids, fighting to keep her tethered to life. Robert's chest heaved as he shouted desperately, "Hold on, Liv. Just hold on. I swear I'll fix this. I'll get justice for you. Please don't leave me now." And just as the doctors prepared to declare her beyond saving, a fragile spark flickered inside Olivia, a sign that the battle for her life was far from over. Inside the operating room, Olivia Carter's body lay fragile, trembling under the harsh glow of surgical lights. The machines that monitored her life sang a chaotic chorus, beeps, alarms, warnings, all telling the doctors that she was slipping further away. But beneath the surface of her broken body, deep within her fading consciousness, a battle was raging. In her mind, Olivia wandered through a foggy landscape, a place between life and death. At first there was silence, heavy and suffocating. Then faintly, like a whisper carried by the wind, she heard her father's voice. "You're not alone, Olivia. Fight, please fight." Tears burned her eyes, even in that dreamlike state. She wanted to answer him, to scream that she was trying, but the weight of betrayal pressed against her chest like chains. Ethan's cold words echoed inside her head, louder than the monitors in the real world. "You've been too dramatic. Maybe if you weren't so difficult, I wouldn't have looked elsewhere." Her heart clenched as those words replayed again and again. Every time she thought of Ethan, the bleeding worsened. It was as if her body itself rejected the man who had destroyed her trust. But then another voice broke through. Robert's voice. Strong, unwavering, filled with love. "You're stronger than him, Liv. Stronger than his lies. Don't let him steal your life. Don't let him steal your baby." The fog lifted slightly. For the first time in hours, Olivia felt a flicker of warmth, like sunlight piercing through storm clouds. She placed her hand against her belly in that liminal space and felt the faintest kick. The baby. Her child was still with her, still fighting alongside her. Back in the hospital, Emily Parker noticed a subtle change on the monitors. "Her vitals just improved," she whispered. "Something's happening. She's responding." Robert pressed his hands to the glass, his voice breaking as he shouted, "That's it, Liv. Stay with me. You hear me? Stay with me." Inside her mind, Olivia could see her father's face now, not just hear his voice. His weathered hands reached out for her, steady as they had been when she was a little girl learning to walk. She wanted to reach back, but shadows loomed. The figure of Ethan standing with Sophia at his side, both of them whispering cruel words that threatened to drag her back down. "You'll never be enough. You'll always be alone." Olivia trembled, torn between the love of her father and the poison of her husband's betrayal. Her knees buckled in that dreamlike world, and for a moment she thought she would fall into the abyss. But then she remembered her promise, the whispered words she had spoken to her unborn child in the nursery rocking chair. "Even if the whole world turns against me, you'll never be alone." That memory ignited something inside her. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to stand tall against the shadows. "No," she whispered fiercely. "I won't give up. Not for him. Not for the pain. I'll fight for my baby." And as Olivia's determination sparked inside her, the monitors in the operating room began to shift, signaling a battle that was far from finished. The tension inside Mount Valley Hospital had already reached its breaking point. Olivia hovered between life and death, her monitors spiking and plunging, as though reflecting the storm within her soul. Robert clung to hope, whispering prayers and words of encouragement through the glass. Emily stood by his side, silently willing Olivia to keep fighting. But then the doors to the waiting area swung open, and a new figure stepped in. A figure that made Robert's stomach twist, Sophia. She was young, strikingly beautiful, her dark hair perfectly styled despite the late hour, her heels clicking against the tile floor. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who believed she belonged anywhere, even in a place where she had no right to be. Whispers rippled through the waiting room as eyes turned to her. Robert's face flushed with fury as realization dawned. He didn't need an introduction. He had read the name in Olivia's journal, written with shaking hands and stained with tears. Sophia, the woman Ethan chose over his pregnant wife. Ethan leapt to his feet the moment he saw her, his mask of calm shattering. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, rushing toward her, panic flashing across his features. "I came because I care about you," Sophia said softly, her voice carrying through the stunned silence. "I heard about Olivia, and I couldn't let you go through this alone." The audacity of her words made Robert's blood boil. He stepped forward, his voice like thunder. "Alone? My daughter is dying because of what you two have done, and you dare show your face here?" Sophia flinched but lifted her chin defiantly. "Don't blame me for your daughter's weakness. Ethan was never happy with her. He deserves more than a woman who spends her days crying and clinging." Gasps filled the room. Robert's fists shook at his sides, his rage barely restrained. Ethan grabbed Sophia's arm, trying to pull her back toward the door. "Keep your voice down. This isn't the place." But it was too late. Emily had overheard everything. Her eyes widened in horror as she realized the truth was spilling into the open. She turned to Robert. "This is it. This is what broke Olivia." Robert's chest heaved as he glared at Ethan. "You let this woman walk into your wife's hospital room while she's bleeding to death because of you? You don't deserve to call yourself a husband or a father." Ethan's face paled, but his arrogance clung stubbornly. "You don't understand, Robert. Olivia was suffocating me. She was too emotional, too needy." "Too needy?" Robert roared, cutting him off. "She's carrying your child. She gave you her heart, and you repaid her with betrayal." His voice cracked, every word dripping with pain. Behind the glass, Olivia's monitors began to spike again. Even in her unconscious state, she seemed to sense the storm raging outside. Her pulse raced, her breathing hitched, as though her body recognized Sophia's presence. Emily grabbed Robert's arm. "We have to get Sophia out of here. If Olivia feels her nearby, it could kill her." And as Sophia stood defiantly in the waiting room, the line between life and death inside the operating room grew thinner than ever before. Inside the operating room, Olivia's condition spiraled the moment Sophia appeared in the hospital. Her monitors erupted in chaos, shrill alarms blaring as doctors scrambled to stabilize her. Blood pressure plummeted, heart rate spiked erratically, and the transfusions barely kept her alive. It was as if her body sensed the venom lingering just outside the door. Dr. Collins barked orders, sweat glistening on his forehead. "We're losing her again. Increase the dosage, keep pressure on the wound." The team moved frantically, but their eyes betrayed a quiet truth. They were running out of options. Outside, the waiting room had turned into a battlefield. Robert stood face to face with Ethan and Sophia, fury radiating from him like fire. "Do you see what's happening in there?" he thundered, pointing toward the operating room. "Every second she's closer to death, and it's because of you two." Sophia crossed her arms, her lips curling into a cruel smirk. "Don't put this on me. Olivia was fragile long before I came along. Ethan needed someone strong, someone who could stand beside him without falling apart." The words cut Robert like a blade. "Fragile? She's stronger than you'll ever be. She's carrying life inside her while fighting to survive betrayal that would have crushed anyone else. That's strength you'll never understand." Ethan tried to step between them, his voice rising. "Enough! This isn't helping her." Robert's eyes blazed. "No, Ethan. What isn't helping her is your lies, your betrayal. She loved you with everything she had, and you poisoned that love." His voice cracked with anguish. "And now she's paying the price while you sit here with your mistress." Gasps filled the room. Nurses nearby exchanged horrified glances. Ethan's face flushed, his mask slipping further as shame flickered across his features. But before he could reply, the doors burst open. A doctor rushed out, his face pale. "We're on the edge of losing her. If her vitals don't stabilize soon, there's nothing more we can do." The room fell silent. Robert staggered back, his chest heaving. For a moment, despair threatened to consume him. But then his eyes hardened, a spark of determination igniting within him. He clutched Olivia's journal in his hands, raising it high for all to see. "You keep treating her body, but you're ignoring her heart," he shouted. "This journal holds the truth. She wrote about the betrayal, the sleepless nights, the despair. She's dying because her spirit has been broken, and until you acknowledge that, you'll never save her. Dr. Collins froze, his authority challenged in front of staff and family alike. Murmurs rippled through the nurses, some nodding in agreement, others staring in disbelief. Emily stepped forward, her voice steady. "He's right. I've seen it myself." She responds to her father's voice. She weakens when Ethan is near. We need to remove the source of her pain. All eyes turned to Ethan. The truth was out now, undeniable, irreversible. Robert's voice thundered one final time. "Get him away from her, or you'll watch her die tonight." And as security was called to escort Ethan and Sophia from the ward, Olivia's body convulsed inside the operating room, teetering on the razor's edge between life and death. The doors slammed shut behind Ethan and Sophia as hospital security escorted them out of the ward. Their protests echoed down the corridor, but Robert didn't flinch. For the first time that night, the poison had been removed from the air. Still, Olivia's condition inside the operating room remained critical. Her monitors screamed, the flat lines drawing dangerously close. Dr. Collins wiped the sweat from his brow, his voice tight with frustration. "We've tried every medical intervention. Her body isn't responding. I don't understand why." Robert stepped forward, clutching Olivia's journal against his chest. His voice thundered with urgency. "Because you're not treating her body. You're treating her heart. Can't you see? The betrayal broke her spirit, and now it's killing her. If you don't address that, no medicine in the world will save her." Collins scoffed, his pride bristling. "This is a hospital, not a counseling session. We don't fight heartbreak with scalpels and transfusions." Emily Parker, the young nurse who had stayed at Olivia's side, stepped forward with fire in her eyes. "Then maybe it's time to try something you don't understand. Mr. Miller is right. I've seen her vitals change when her father speaks to her. It's real, Dr. Collins. We can't ignore it anymore." The staff exchanged uneasy glances. For a moment, the room hung in tension, science against spirit, logic against love. Finally, Robert stepped closer to the glass, pressing his palm against it, his voice breaking with desperation. "Let me in there," he begged. "Let me talk to her. Just give me a chance. If you can't save her with your machines, maybe her father's love can reach where medicine cannot." Collins hesitated, his jaw tight, unwilling to admit defeat. But the monitors screamed again, Olivia's heart rate dropping dangerously low. The resident doctor whispered urgently, "We're out of time, sir." For the first time that night, Collins' authority cracked. He gave a reluctant nod. "Fine, but this is highly irregular. If it doesn't work, it's on you." Robert didn't wait for another word. He scrubbed in quickly, his hands trembling as he pulled on sterile gloves. Emily helped guide him through the doors into the operating room. The sight of his daughter nearly brought him to his knees. Olivia lay pale, drenched in sweat, her belly still rising faintly with the life she carried inside. Tubes and wires covered her fragile frame, but she was still his little girl. He stepped closer, his voice soft yet fierce. "Olivia, it's Dad. I'm here, sweetheart. You're not alone." The monitors flickered, a faint, almost imperceptible stabilization. Robert gripped her hand gently, his tears falling onto the sheets. "Listen to me, Liv. You are stronger than this. You are stronger than the pain, stronger than the betrayal. You have a baby who needs you, who is waiting to meet you. You cannot leave now. Not like this." The room held its breath. A single beep steadied, then another. Olivia's eyelids twitched, as if trying to respond to his voice. And as Robert poured every ounce of love into his words, the impossible began to happen. Olivia showed the first fragile signs of fighting her way back to life. The sterile hum of machines filled the operating room as Robert leaned closer to his daughter, gripping her hand with all the strength he had left. Olivia's skin was cold, fragile, but still alive. Around them, doctors and nurses watched with wary eyes. This was not protocol, not medicine, but in that moment, Robert's love was the only thing that seemed to cut through the darkness threatening to consume her. "Liv, it's me," he whispered, his voice trembling but steady with determination. "Your dad. I've been here the whole time. I will never leave you. Do you hear me? You are not alone." For a moment, the monitors flickered. The rapid decline slowed. A weak, unsteady rhythm appeared. The doctors exchanged nervous glances. Inside her mind, Olivia wandered through the fog again. But this time, the shadows were breaking. Her father's voice echoed like a beacon in the darkness. She saw flashes of her childhood. Robert teaching her how to ride a bike, bandaging her scraped knees, staying up late to help her with school projects. He had always been her anchor, her steady hand when the world felt too heavy. And now, his voice pulled at her with the same strength. "Liv, you can't give up," Robert continued, his tears dripping onto her gown. "Your baby needs you. I need you. Don't let that man's betrayal steal your life. You are more than his lies. You are stronger than his weakness." Olivia stirred faintly, her eyelids fluttering. Inside she could feel the chains of despair loosening. The vision of Ethan and Sophia still haunted her, their cruel laughter, their poisonous words. But her father's love burned brighter, a light that pushed the shadows back. The baby kicked inside her belly. The sensation jolted her even in that fragile state. Tears welled in her dreamlike eyes. "My child is still here, still fighting." Back in the real world, Emily leaned in toward the monitor. Her pulse is rising. It's weak, but it's stronger than before. Dr. Collins frowned, unwilling to admit the impossible, yet unable to deny what was unfolding before him. "Keep monitoring," he muttered, his voice tight. Robert squeezed Olivia's hand tighter. "That's it, Liv. Come back to me. Come back to your baby. You've already survived so much. You're not leaving us now." In her mind, Olivia finally found her strength. She turned her back on the shadows, on Ethan's cruel words, on Sophia's mocking smile. She walked toward her father's voice, toward the warmth and light that called her home. Each step grew stronger, her heart beating louder, her resolve hardening. Her eyelids fluttered again, this time longer. A weak groan slipped from her lips. The room gasped in unison. "She's responding!" Emily cried, her hands trembling with relief. Robert bent closer, his tears falling freely. "That's it, sweetheart. Keep fighting. Just a little more." The machine steadied, the alarms quieting slightly as Olivia clung to life with every ounce of her will. And as her fingers twitched faintly in her father's grasp, the impossible question remained. Would she awaken fully, or would the shadows still pull her back into the abyss? While Olivia clung to life inside the operating room, the hospital corridors were filled with another kind of chaos. Ethan Carter paced near the exit doors where security had forced him and Sophia to wait. His polished mask had cracked, revealing the restless man beneath. A man cornered, desperate to protect his image more than his wife. Sophia stood beside him, her hand on his arm. "Ethan, we can't keep hiding. People already suspect. If Olivia doesn't make it, you'll be free, and we can stop sneaking around." Ethan snapped his head toward her, his eyes sharp. "Do you hear yourself? This isn't the time." But it was too late. Their heated whispers carried, and several nurses nearby exchanged uneasy glances. The gossip spread like wildfire. Within minutes, whispers of Ethan's affair were circling the staff, trickling into the waiting room where Robert sat clutching Olivia's journal. Robert rose, his body trembling with rage as he approached the couple. "So it's true," he growled, his voice echoing through the hall. "You didn't even wait until she was safe to admit it." Ethan stiffened, his jaw tight. "Robert, keep your voice down. You don't understand." "I understand enough," Robert cut him off. His voice thundered, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. "My daughter is in there fighting for her life because of your betrayal. She wrote about it in her journal. She bled because you broke her spirit." Gasps erupted around them. Reporters who had been lingering outside the hospital, alerted by the drama, rushed in with cameras ready. Flashbulbs went off, capturing Ethan's face as Robert held the journal high for all to see. "This is Olivia's handwriting," Robert declared, his voice breaking. "She wrote about your affair with this woman. She wrote about the nights she cried herself to sleep, the despair you caused her. And now she is dying because of it. This is your doing." Ethan's face turned red, his composure crumbling under the weight of public exposure. He tried to lunge forward, but security blocked him. Sophia paled, shrinking back as reporters swarmed. "Mr. Carter, is it true you cheated on your pregnant wife?" one shouted. "Did your affair cause her medical collapse?" another demanded. Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing every bead of sweat, every flicker of guilt across Ethan's face. His carefully crafted image of success and charm was unraveling in real time, replaced by the truth of his cruelty. Sophia tried to speak, but her words only fanned the flames. He was unhappy, she was too emotional, too weak. He needed someone stronger. The room erupted in outrage. Even the nurses gasped at her coldness. Robert's voice cut through the noise, shaking with righteous fury. Stronger? A real woman doesn't destroy another's family. A real man doesn't abandon his wife when she's carrying his child. You two are nothing but cowards. Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line, his eyes darting to the cameras, realizing his empire, his reputation, everything he had built was crumbling before him. And as the reporters pressed closer, demanding answers, Ethan knew that his darkest secret was no longer hidden. It was about to destroy him completely. The storm of reporters and scandal outside the operating room echoed faintly through the hospital walls, but inside, the fight for Olivia's life continued. The doctors worked tirelessly, their hands steady but their eyes filled with doubt. Then slowly, miraculously, her vitals began to stabilize. The frantic beeping softened into a steady rhythm. Robert, still by her side, leaned closer. His voice was hoarse from hours of pleading. "That's it, sweetheart. Come back to us. You're stronger than all of this. Your baby is waiting for you." Olivia's eyelids fluttered. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she groaned softly, a fragile sound that made the entire room freeze. Emily gasped, her eyes wide. "She's trying to wake up." The doctors leaned in, monitoring closely as Olivia's chest rose with a deeper breath. Her head shifted ever so slightly on the pillow. Inside her mind, the fog lifted. She saw her father's face more clearly now, his warm hands reaching for her, his voice guiding her home. Behind him, the shadows of Ethan and Sophia faded into the distance, their cruel laughter losing its grip on her spirit. She whispered, her voice raspy, almost inaudible. "Dad?" Robert's knees nearly buckled. He squeezed her hand tightly. "I'm here, Liv. I'm right here. You're safe. Just hold on." Her lips trembled. "The baby?" Tears spilled down Robert's cheeks as he nodded. "The baby's heart is still strong. You both made it through the worst, but you need to keep fighting." Her eyes blinked open, heavy and blurred, but alive. She scanned the room, confused. Where's Ethan?" Robert's jaw tightened. He didn't want to burden her, not now. But the truth was already spilling through the hospital like wildfire. She would learn it soon enough. "Don't worry about him. Just focus on healing." Emily stepped closer, her voice soft. "Olivia, you've been so brave. But you should know. The truth about Ethan is out now. Everyone knows." Olivia's heart clenched, but instead of breaking again, a strange calm washed over her. She had already felt the betrayal deep in her soul. Hearing it spoken aloud, confirmed, only validated what she knew. A single tear slid down her cheek, not from pain, but from release. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "He really betrayed me." Robert bent closer, brushing her hair from her face. "Yes, Liv, but that's his shame, not yours. You are stronger than his lies, and you are not alone. You have me, you have your child, and you have a future waiting for you." Olivia's hand drifted to her belly. She felt a faint kick, and for the first time since her world collapsed, she smiled weakly. "I'll fight," she whispered, "for my baby." The monitors steadied further, her pulse growing stronger. The doctors exchanged astonished looks. Against all odds, Olivia Carter was clawing her way back from the edge of death. But as she opened her eyes fully, her gaze hardened with a new fire. She would not only survive, she would rise, and Ethan would face the consequences of everything he had done. News spread like wildfire. By morning, every major outlet in California was buzzing with the scandal. Headlines flashed across screens. "Wealthy developer exposed. Affair while pregnant wife fights for life." Photos of Ethan Carter and Sophia at the hospital flooded social media, his carefully polished image crumbling into dust. The once respected businessman now sat in a corner of the hospital lobby, his phone buzzing relentlessly with angry calls from investors, clients, and friends. His company's board members had already called an emergency meeting. Contracts were being canceled, partnerships dissolved overnight. Ethan Carter, who once bragged about being untouchable, was watching his empire collapse piece by piece. Sophia sat beside him, but her confidence had vanished. Her eyes darted nervously at the reporters lingering outside. "Ethan, we can fix this," she whispered. "We can leave town, start fresh somewhere else." Ethan snapped, his voice cold. "Fix this? You've ruined everything. If you hadn't shown up at the hospital, none of this would have gone public." Her face fell. "Don't blame me. You're the one who betrayed her. You're the one who lied." Their voices carried, and nearby nurses exchanged disgusted looks. Word of their argument reached Robert, who stood tall at the other end of the lobby. When he approached, his presence silenced the room. His voice boomed, filled with righteous fury. "You built your life on lies, Ethan, and now the world sees you for who you really are." Ethan shot to his feet, his face red. "You think you've won, Robert? Olivia is weak. She'll never recover from this. She'll come crawling back because she can't live without me." The words were venom, but Robert only shook his head. "No, Ethan. She has something you'll never understand. She has strength, and she has love that doesn't come from money or power. She has me, her baby, and now she has the truth. She doesn't need you anymore." As if on cue, the hospital doors opened and a crowd of reporters rushed forward, cameras flashing. Ethan tried to shield his face, but Robert raised Olivia's journal high once more. "This is her voice," he declared to the press. "This is the truth of what Ethan Carter did to my daughter. She nearly died because of the heartbreak he caused. And now, justice must be served." The press erupted with questions. Will there be charges? Is Olivia safe now? What will happen to Ethan Carter's company? Ethan's phone buzzed again, and this time he saw the final blow. A message from his lawyer. "Your assets are frozen. Divorce proceedings have been filed. Prepare for litigation." His knees buckled. For the first time, fear carved into his proud features. The empire he had built, the reputation he had worshipped, the family he had betrayed, it was all gone. Robert leaned close, his voice steady and unforgiving. "You may have broken her heart, but you didn't break her spirit. She will rise from this. And you, Ethan, will spend the rest of your life drowning in the ruins you created." And as Ethan's world collapsed around him, a new chapter was opening for Olivia. One of strength, healing, and rebirth. The sun streamed through the hospital window, warm and golden, as if the world itself was celebrating Olivia Carter's survival. Days had passed since her near-death crisis, and though her body remained weak, her spirit was unbreakable. With each breath, with every small movement, she reclaimed a piece of herself that Ethan had tried to destroy. Robert sat by her bedside, his rough hand clasping hers gently. "You did it, Liv," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You fought your way back." Olivia turned her head toward him, her eyes soft but filled with new strength. "I didn't do it alone," she said. "I had you, and I had my baby." She placed her hand on her belly, smiling through tears as she felt a soft kick. That tiny heartbeat had been her anchor in the storm, the reason she chose to keep living. Emily Parker entered quietly, carrying fresh flowers from the staff who had grown attached to Olivia during her ordeal. "The whole hospital is talking about you," Emily said warmly. "You've given them hope. Everyone saw how love saved you when medicine couldn't." Olivia smiled faintly. "It wasn't just love, it was truth. I couldn't keep living in lies anymore." Meanwhile, outside the hospital, Ethan Carter's empire lay in ruins. His company crumbled, his name dragged across headlines as the world condemned him. Sophia had vanished, unwilling to stand by him now that his fortune was gone. The man who once commanded respect now faced lawsuits, public disgrace, and the cold reality of a life without power. Robert never told Olivia the full extent of Ethan's downfall while she recovered. She didn't need bitterness poisoning her healing, but whispers reached her ears anyway, and one afternoon she asked softly, "Dad, what will happen to him?" Robert hesitated, then answered honestly, "He'll face justice. But that's not your burden anymore, Liv. He chose his path. Now it's time for you to choose yours." Olivia nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "Then I choose peace. I choose my baby. I choose life." Weeks later, Olivia was discharged from the hospital. The day she walked out, supported by Robert's steady arm, cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and strangers cheered. But Olivia didn't look at them. She looked at the sky, the same sky she had painted on her baby's nursery ceiling, and whispered a prayer of gratitude. At home, the nursery waited, filled with pastel colors, stuffed animals, and stars painted above. She lowered herself into the rocking chair, cradle in her belly. Her father stood in the doorway, watching her with pride. "This is just the beginning," Olivia said softly. "I thought I had lost everything, but what I lost was only a man who never deserved me. What I gained is strength I never knew I had, and a future worth fighting for." Robert's eyes glistened as he stepped into the room. "Your mother would be so proud, and so am I." Olivia smiled, her hand resting on her belly as her baby kicked again. "We're going to be okay, Dad. Better than okay. We're going to thrive." And as Olivia looked forward with renewed hope, the message was clear. Betrayal may wound, but love, truth, and courage can rebuild a life stronger than ever before. So the story has finally come to an end. And now, my dear friends, if you are still here with me until this very moment, it means something in this story touched your heart in a way that words alone cannot explain. Olivia's journey was not just about betrayal and pain. It was about rediscovering strength when everything seemed broken, about choosing life even when despair tried to steal it. In many ways, this is what life gives us all. Unexpected storms. Sometimes they come as loss, sometimes as heartbreak, sometimes as the silence of people who should have stood by us but didn't. Yet, as the Stoic philosophers remind us, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Seneca. Pain is real, but what destroys us is often the meaning we give to it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Olivia's healing came the moment she turned inward, chose to fight for her child, and refused to let betrayal define her future. The lesson here is simple yet powerful. We cannot always control what happens to us, but we can control how we rise after it. Like Olivia, each of us has a choice, to surrender to bitterness or to build something stronger from the ruins. Her story reminds us that love, truth, and courage are forces far greater than betrayal or loss. So my wonderful friends, if you felt something move inside you while listening to this story, don't let it fade away. Carry it with you. Apply it in your own life. Let this be a reminder that you, too, have the strength to overcome whatever storm you face. And if this story touched you, please give it a like, share it with someone who might need the reminder, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Because together, through stories like this, we remind each other of something deeply human, that even in our darkest hours, healing is possible, and hope is never truly lost.